Well, good afternoon to you. It's 4:07 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, we will be joined by the incoming border czar himself. Tom Homan is here at 5 o'clock. Tell your friends, tell your family, and tune in, WMAL, to listen to Tom Homan as he explains how he's going to get our nation's border back under control. And then Michael Whatley, the chairman of the RNC, joins us at 5:30. A lot to discuss with him on a very busy news day as we find out that President Trump has just selected Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz to become the next Attorney General of the United States. Let the left-wing screeching commence. It already has been going. They have been going nuts for the lefties who are still on X. I see them. They're all today. They're pretending they're quitting again. Have you noticed that? Oh, we're quitting. We're heading to this other app that nobody's ever heard of, and then they all come back. They all come back because they can't stay away. They want to be part of it. I get it. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. We'll get more in depth into the Matt Gaetz pick coming up, but I want to talk about all of these foreign policy picks now. There's a lot of them, and of course we've got Pete Hegseth is headed to become the Secretary of Defense. President Trump announcing that last night. Whoopi Goldberg over at The View is not happy about this because she says that's a job that should be for a regular weekday TV host, not a weekend host.
He also picked, you ready? Co-host of Fox and Friends Weekend. Not even like regular. Weekend.
Not even regular.
Pete Hegseth.
All right, so they're still processing it over there at The View. Meanwhile, my next guest has already done the processing. He's going to tell you what he thinks about all this. Lieutenant Colonel Tony Schaffer is here, president of the London Center for Policy Research and a CIA-trained former senior intelligence officer. Sir, good to have you back with us.
Hey, Ben, it's always great to join you. Thanks for having me.
All right.
Great topic.
What do you make of Pete Hegseth in the role of Secretary of Defense?
I know it's hard to believe someone who's actually got degrees from Harvard and Princeton, has been in combat, actually decorated for his work in combat, published author, actually has worked on some of these issues behind the scenes. It's hard to believe that he's not qualified. I don't know. I mean, geez. I guess maybe if he was like a cartoon character, do you think they'd maybe like him better then? I don't know. But I think Pete's a great choice. One of the things notable, Vince, I'm seeing is a pattern. People that President Trump are picking don't owe anything to the bureaucracy or to big business.
Yes,
these aren't corporate people coming in. That revolving door between big corporations and big DoD. He's not doing that. He's picking people who actually are technically competent, who have a level of experience necessary to be effective in the job, and dare I say, loyalty to the Constitution and the concepts that President Trump is putting forward in policy. So he's picking people who will do their job and do it within the context of what he wants done. I think he's got every right to do that.
Let me quote the Politico piece again because I can't get enough of this. It just cracks me up. This is the Politico piece this morning. They talked to a bunch of defense industry lobbyists, including this guy who's anonymous, of course, and they say one assessment was more blunt. Who the F is this guy, said a defense industry lobbyist who was granted anonymity to offer candid views. The lobbyist said they had hoped for, quote, someone who actually has an extensive background in defense. That would be a good start. So, Tony, when you hear a quote like that from a defense industry lobbyist, what does that tell you?
They want a general or a senior executive who spent their entire life sucking off the I'm going to get the proper word without getting you in trouble. Sucking off the trough of the republic, and who are committed to continuing the extensive and uncontrolled spending of DoD. That's what they're saying.
Yes, they want them to PG it up a little bit more. They want access to the all-you-can-eat buffet of federal tax dollars that they've had before, but not anymore. Exactly. Not anymore. No. Thank you, though, for working through that. I appreciate that. But that's critical, isn't it? And that's such a smart observation. All these guys who are coming in, they're not beholden to any of these institutions, which normal people take as a very positive sign.
Yeah. So Lloyd Austin came off a board. I know General Austin. You know, he came through like most generals. They get up to that 4-star level, jump off, get a multi high six-figure job at a corporation, then they come back into the government, and they basically feed off each other. One of my heroes, General Eisenhower, President Eisenhower, warned us of the military-industrial congressional complex. That complex, Vince, is one of the reasons we have unlimited spending that most people would recognize, and Pete has accurately said in interviews that the Pentagon's not actually working and posturing itself towards the next war. They're simply kind of reformatting the old wars and funding that. So Pete doesn't have that illusion. I have not talked to Pete since he's been nominated, but I know his thinking on this. He's going to come in with a completely clean sheet approach, examine things, the threats as they are, not trying to politicize or otherwise deny what the threats are, look at what's required to address those threats, and then go about trying to actually find the funding and resources to build a military that can actually address those threats, not, seeking to maintain the steady stream of highly expensive, highly dubious spending that Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Raytheon, they all get, and obviously many of us are not beholden to them, and obviously Pete is not beholden to them, and I think that's what the lobbyists are all worried about.
Well, thank goodness. I mean, look, we obviously need like a defense industrial base that can produce lethal weapons, no question. You have to have contracts to buy good weaponry. That's not going to go away. But hopefully you have somebody who comes in who has a very clear view about what the mission of the military is. It's lethality. It's not this DEI forced racial prejudice stuff.
Bingo.
That they've been undertaking, and it's not lowering standards. It's not hosting drag queen events. It's actually making the military more efficient and more lethal.
Well, meritocracy is going to be the watchword that returns to the DoD versus the DEI, where DEI basically, as we've talked about before here on your show, Vince, the idea of having who you sleep with, the color of your skin, if you wear a furry suit as part of your uniform as a notable feature of getting promoted, those things all go away. And I know that they're talking about having boards. I've talked to several senior officers who are hoping to be on those boards. And the idea is not vengeance. It's not to go after people for their beliefs. The idea is, how well did you perform your job as a senior officer? Were you successful? Did you actually lead to winning a war or winning a battle?
Yeah.
Or are you just another politician in uniform who's been kind of brought up through a system that rewards loyalty to a Marxist concept, which DEI is very Marxist,
yes,
rather than actually focusing on getting your job done.
Can I ask you a basic question about the military? What do you think about measuring members of the military based on physical fitness?
Well, we've lost the bubble on that. I know several officers who have not actually wanted to be maintained to that standard. I mean, most people, and one of my friends, and we've talked about him before, General Joe Dunford, Fighting Joe Dunford. Joe was one of the Marines who thought that we should maintain a rigorous standard of fitness for all members of the military. It's not been quite so enforced lately, something we have to get back to. And also, we have to get back to trying to encourage kids who want to enlist to be physically fit as well. There's no substitute for being physically fit at any age. And that's something I think the military will get back to be focused on, is trying to find a way to make sure that we're ready, not only intellectually ready, but physically ready as well.
And so when you say at any age, you mean that we shouldn't have fat general officers?
I'd like to believe that that would be one of the criteria we actually look at. Yeah, you shouldn't have fat generals.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, we're not the Soviet Union, We can't be running around with 1,000 different awards on our uniform and have a belly the size of Congressman Adler. You know?
I just think it sends a message to the troops if they have a pear-shaped leader, and that's not what you need. So when you're, one of the things that we're looking at here is there was a report yesterday from the Wall Street Journal that President Trump is drafting, or at least there in front of him is a draft executive order that would create a board that would purge generals. They're calling it a warrior board of retired senior military personnel with the power to review 3- and 4-star officers and basically decide which of them need to be fired immediately. One of the details here that I wasn't aware of until I was reading more about it is that there's historic precedent for this because General George C. Marshall had created something in 1940, the very same thing, and called it a plucking board. It was a plucking board And the idea was that he put 6 retired officers on a board who were empowered to remove from line promotion any officer for reasons deemed good and sufficient. That was the standard.
Yep.
And in other words, this has historic precedence, Tony Schaffer.
Yeah, so that's exactly the point. So what he did, Marshall, is examine the military force he had available in 1940. Remember, we were ramping up to go to war. I'm not saying we're going to war now. I'm just saying the military is very negligent in actually maintaining warriors. And this board would set up a series of defined, very well defined criteria. The current serving officers would be measured against that criteria. A board would review, interview, and make decisions. And oh, by the way, one of the things I think, one of the lessons President Trump, I think, has learned is that he is the commander in chief. He has the right to choose anybody he wants to be maintained in the military or fire those. Any senior officer serves at the convenience of the senior executive. And I think President Trump was buffaloed on that last time. I don't think he's going to be buffaloed on it this time.
Okay, let me ask you about some of your other thoughts on some of these other foreign policy picks. Director of National Intelligence today, Tulsi Gabbard, selected by President Trump. This is a woman who I was just going into some more detail on, has been spied on by the United States government. She's had air marshals sent to track her. She's been treated as a terrorist by the government. What must the intel community think now that she's being given this incredibly important post?
Well, there should be a pucker factor there because she's coming in now. Full disclosure, I know Tulsi. We're friends. I advised her when she was a member of Congress. So my words, please take my words with that in mind. I think she's not only qualified, she has motivation to actually examine these things from the perspective of a typical citizen who served her country well. She is still, by the way, a lieutenant colonel in the Army Reserve. She's a serving officer. So the idea that she, because of her political beliefs, would be spied on by the government simply because she's inconvenient. Her ideas are inconvenient to the current administration is very dangerous. And so I think she's the right person to go in there to examine that. And oh, by the way, even when she was a Democrat, if you recall, Vince, she was being attacked by Democrats.
Yes.
So I think she's got the skills necessary to be tempered in her approach, but very much willing to do the hard things to get to the bottom of why these things are so far off the rails.
Yeah, few things give me as much joy today as the fact that Hillary Clinton is into her second box of wine at this moment because of the Tulsi Gabbard pick. That really does bring me a lot of joy. And I know we're short on time, but Michael Waltz being selected for National Security Advisor, that's another big one. And, of course, Marco Rubio as Secretary of State today. What do you make of these picks?
So Mike Waltz, again, Mike and I are friends. I know him. He's a good guy. He's not only experienced, he goes back 20 years doing what he does. He's been with President Trump during the entire process of this campaign. I think, again, he's got excellent ideas and understanding. What was another mistake Trump made last go around was he picked people who were loyal but not capable. Mike Waltz is both loyal and capable. One of the things that others, and I'll just say Seb Gorka, I love Seb, but he did not understand the mechanisms of the government to go affect the changes that President Trump wanted. No such deficit of understanding will exist within Mike Waltz or the other picks. They're going to understand how to actually do the hard work of implementing President Trump's policies. And I tell you, Vince, right now, the people within the sound of our voice, if they don't understand what's coming, I think they soon will.
Okay. All right. Lieutenant Colonel Tony Schaffer, always good to have you on the show, sir. Thank you for your assessment today. Good to talk to you. Okay, let's go to the phones. I've got Scotty calling in from Lovettsville now on line 1. Hello, Scotty. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, Vince. How you doing today, man?
I'm good.
Cool. Hey, man, I need someone to explain to me why Team Trump thinks it's a good idea to be plucking these people out of their House seats with such a thin majority. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. It's a very thin majority. In fact, as Sean Spicer points out today, House Republicans currently have 220. The three members of the House have been selected now for roles, including Elise Stefanik, Waltz, and Gates. And you need 218 for a majority. So yes, you're dealing with a very thin margin. So one thing I would say about that is you have to believe that the Trump transition team is very aware of that dynamic, obviously. So there's a part of this is you have to have a little confidence that they have that in mind as they make these picks. Another piece of this is, of course, that it's going to depend each state on how they handle the replacement. But these are all three of those districts are very red districts. And so what we're looking at is Republican congressmen coming in at some point. Now, it really comes down to how do they handle the handoff? Because Trump doesn't take office until January 20th. These guys can hold on to their seats and be in Congress for that entire period, for that whole duration, so they could help maintain the House advantage there during that time. And the actual confirmation hearings, they traditionally happen before President Trump. I mean, this is especially because he's making these picks so early. They're going to be able to do these hearings in January before he even becomes inaugurated, before he becomes president of the United States. They can conduct the hearings, knock them out, get them out of the way, and get everybody in place. So this really comes down to, Scotty, I'm with you. It matters a lot, but it comes down to some trust in Team Trump thinking that part through.
Gotcha. But, I hope they're not depending solely on special elections being in the red districts, because that's never a 100% guarantee. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Any place where there's an opportunity for an outcome that you hadn't anticipated is a bad thing. But there's some very good picks here. And the end goal is that on net, it's a great thing for the country. And yes, you absolutely need control of the House. You can't lose that. That's a very important piece of this. Thanks, Scotty. We'll keep our eye on that. That matters a lot. Stay with us. I've got more of your calls coming up. And speaking of Congress, a new Senate Republican leader picked today. We'll get into what it means for the country and how Rick Scott really did all of us a favor. I'll explain why. Hey, good afternoon to you. It's 4:35 here at News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up on the program, the border czar. No, not Kamala. The one who's actually going to get control of the border. Tom Homan joins us at 5 o'clock. And then Michael Whatley, chairman of the RNC, is here at 5:30. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Everybody in Washington talking about President Trump's pick for Attorney General this afternoon. Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz. Didn't see that one coming. Just didn't see it coming. But it's here. You know who did see it coming? Well, obviously President Trump did. But apparently from some time ago, do you remember this moment at all on the campaign trail? Here's President Trump saying that he's got a little secret with Matt Gaetz. Take a listen.
We got to get the senators elected because we can take the Senate pretty easily. And I think with our little secret, we're going to do really well with the House, right? Our little secret is having a big impact. He and I have a secret. We'll tell you what it is when the race is over.
Well, apparently we know now. The secret is out. Matt Gaetz is the pick to be the Attorney General of the United States. I am seeing some speculation that, well, maybe Trump is going with Matt Gaetz as a way to make it so that all the other nominees they sail through. That Gaetz will be the controversial one, and that he's he's the shield for everyone else. I don't know. Look, here's what we know about the United States Senate. There was a vote today for who would become the next Republican leader. In that vote, Senator John Thune prevailed. It's a secret vote, so we don't get to see the whip count. But John Thune prevailed. We did see some of the totals earlier, and it was pretty split at first between Thune, Cornyn, and Rick Scott. Rick Scott came in third, so they bumped him out of the race entirely. Remember, he was the conservative pick for the role. And so it was down to John Thune and John Cornyn, and John Thune won pretty handily. Thune won the gig, so John Thune is now going to be the Republican leader going into this next Congress. And here's why I'm looking at this with a little bit of optimism. Now, I wanted Rick Scott to win this for the same reason that every conservative wanted Rick Scott to win this thing, because he would represent a change from the establishment status quo that Americans are rejecting, the kind of establishment status quo that ignores priorities that affect you and instead focuses on priorities that benefit them at your expense. So we'd like to stop that in Washington. But the fact that Rick Scott threw his hat in this ring has meaning, and it had an effect, actually. And here's what I mean. Because Rick Scott got into this race, first of all, Senate leadership races are not normally the kind of thing that the average American is paying that much attention to. It's not often that people, this is how Mitch McConnell keeps getting reelected over and over and over and over again as Republican leader. It's like the public, they're aware of it. It just happens and we go on our merry way. But this time, special focus was placed on this. And that was thanks in no small part to Rick Scott saying, you know what, I'm in this thing and I'm in it to win it. I'd like to have this gig because I think I can do good things for the American people. I can execute on Trump's agenda. I've got a great record for it. And the people noticed. And so a lot of people came out all across social media. Thank you, Elon, for giving us a place where we can express ourselves freely. And they said, yes, I too am for Rick Scott. I think Rick Scott would be great. And so then you got into this position where Donald Trump just won an election, huge political mandate. He has all of the political energy in the room. If Donald Trump had decided, I'm endorsing you, I pick you, that guy basically becomes Republican leader. But President Trump didn't do that. He stood back and he said, okay, let them fight it out amongst themselves. And you know how these guys in the United States Senate work. They say, hey, please stay out of this. It's a different branch of government. Can you just please not get involved? This is supposed to be our thing. We're supposed to pick this. And stay back. And they don't say that to President Trump. They don't want to annoy him, but they figure out some sort of creative way to deliver that message to try and keep him at bay. And one of the ways they do that, now we have a real race on our hands, is they try and convince Donald Trump, hey, I'm going to see to your agenda. They offer him assurances. I'm going to take care of you. I am going to make sure to do the things that you need me to do in the United States Senate. Now, that doesn't happen unless there's a competitive race. If it was just one of them running, if it was just Cornyn, if it was just Thune, they'd be like, that's fine, and nobody would care. Then he would get elected, and they would just run the Senate business the way they wanted to run it. Donald Trump's voters be damned. It doesn't matter. But instead, because Rick Scott gets involved, suddenly, at the very least, they have to start paying lip service to, I'm going to give space to Trump's agenda. I'm going to do what's on the minds of Trump voters. And so 3 days ago, President Trump put out a post on Truth Social, and he declared the following, without endorsing anybody, he declared the following. He said, any Republican senator who is seeking the coveted leadership position in the United States Senate must agree to recess appointments in the Senate, without which we will not be able to get people confirmed in a timely manner. He wrote, quote, he added that the positions that he's nominating all these people for should be filled, quote, immediately. Immediately. So this is his demand. His demand is really simple. I'm nominating a bunch of people. They need to take office immediately. And if necessary, I need to be able to make recess appointments. Now, recess appointments are in the United States Constitution. This is a power that is afforded to the President of the United States. When the Senate is not in session, not available for advice and consent, the president still needs to be able to do the business of the American people. If there's a vacancy, he needs to be able to fill it. And the Senate is not in session, he can make a recess appointment. The effect of that is to place someone in office and give them all of the powers of a cabinet secretary, all of them. They exist in an acting role as the secretary of that agency, and they can have that role for up to 2 years in that format. So this is a very important power for the president. Now, if you are the other party controlling the Senate, if you're the Democrats, well, you do everything you can to stop that. You don't want President Trump using the recess power. You don't want him using recess appointments. You stay in session. You have these, what they call pro forma sessions, where it's not actually in session, but you pretend you're in session in order to stop the president from exercising that power. That's what they do. That's the game that's played. First of all, why would a Republican Congress even consider staying in a pro forma session in order to block the president of the United States? It's madness that they would do that. But President Trump had to browbeat them into submission. And thankfully, because Rick Scott got into this race, guess what happened? All three of them publicly promised that they're going to get these nominees through quickly and that they will go into recess. They will go into recess. The New York Times wrote about it this week. They said Senator Rick Scott of Florida was the first to make such a vow in an attempt to curry favor with Mr. Trump. Mr. Scott quickly picked up the endorsement of one of the president-elect's biggest backers, the billionaire Elon Musk, supported Rick Scott. Not to be outdone, Senator John Thune of South Dakota, who is considered a frontrunner in the race, released a statement saying that he too would push to swiftly staff Mr. Trump's administration. He wrote, one thing is clear. We must act quickly and decisively to get the president's cabinet and other nominees in place as soon as possible to start delivering on the mandate we've been sent to execute. And all options are on the table to make that happen, including recess appointments. There's John Thune saying it. And then Senator John Cornyn was not far behind, the New York Times says, quote, it's unacceptable for Senate Democrats to blockade President Trump's cabinet appointments, he wrote on social media Sunday. If they do, we will stay in session, including weekends, until they relent. Additionally, the Constitution expressly confers the power on the president to make recess appointments. So all three of them come along and they say, okay, we'll get these people through quickly, and we'll allow the president to do recess appointments by not getting in his way. That's what he asked for. And that doesn't happen unless Rick Scott gets into that race. That doesn't happen unless Rick Scott causes this trouble. And he did. So I'll do credit today to Rick Scott for making that happen. Senator John Thune did step up to a microphone today. Now, still, remember, you still have to hold them to their promises. People lie to you. People lie to you. People have lied to President Trump. But this is where you and I come in. We have to be there to make sure that doesn't happen. So Senator John Thune today stepping out, saying, we're excited to regain the majority and enact Donald Trump's agenda.
And this Republican team is united. We are on one team. We are excited to reclaim the majority and to get to work with our colleagues in the House to enact President Trump's agenda. We have a mandate from the American people, a mandate not only to clean up the mess left by the Biden-Harris-Schumer agenda, but also to deliver on President Trump's priorities. We will make sure that the president and his team have the tools and the support that they need to enforce border security laws and to remove the violent criminals who are wreaking havoc in every one of our states. We will work to make America prosperous again by streamlining the bureaucratic machine and overturning costly Biden-Harris regulations. And we will work to restore American energy dominance. Not just our energy security, but energy dominance, which will lower costs and bolster our national security.
Now, one of the nice things about what you just heard is that he speaks 60% faster than Mitch McConnell. So that's an improvement. We can get these statements out a little bit more quickly. He also talked about the nominations, which is what the president cares about. He wants his cabinet in place. Here's what John Thune said about that.
As you know, the Senate has an advise and consent role under the Constitution, so we will do everything we can to process his noms quickly, get them installed in their position so they can begin to implement his agenda.
Leader Thune, you've said that recess appointments are on the table. That's a key demand from President-elect Donald Trump. Will you move forward with that?
Well, what we're going to do is make sure that we are processing his nominees in a way that gets them into those positions so they can implement his agenda. How that happens remains to be seen. You know, obviously, we want to make sure our committees have confirmation hearings like they typically do, and that these nominees reported out to the floor. But I've said this, and I mean it, that we expect a level of cooperation from the Democrats to work with us to get these folks installed. And obviously, we're going to look at explore all options to make sure that they get moved and that they get moved quickly.
Okay, so there he is. We're going to explore all options. He's already said he supports recess appointments, and that's a big deal. And let me emphasize the timetable here. Confirmation hearings can take place in January. You get a new Congress seated. I think it was January 3rd. You get them seated. They deal with the Electoral College vote on January 6th. They've got the month of January leading up to the inauguration to conduct these confirmation hearings. They can conduct them if they'd like, get them underway, so that way President Trump is ready to go on day one. President Trump's first 100 days cannot be confirmation hearings. They can't be. You can't have the business of the United States Senate tied up in confirmation hearings. So whatever hearings they need to do, they should do before President Trump arrives. When he gets there, he has a legislative agenda he has to get to immediately. And that requires the full attention of the House and the United States Senate, and that's where they should be, on President Trump's legislative agenda. And here's what they might do. Here's what might be kind of fun. What if once President Trump gets into office, the Senate instantly goes into recess? Instantly. Republicans control it. 53 of them do. They instantly go into recess, and President Trump recess appoints his entire cabinet. Right there on the spot, and then allows the Senate to conduct hearings about whether or not they will get the permanent role. The effect is the same. They get the power immediately. They get all the powers of the cabinet secretaries. President Trump gets his cabinet, and then the Senate can go about the business of doing the advice and consent that exists in the United States Constitution. Well, one way or the other, President Trump wants to make sure this happens and happens quickly. So that's the demand he put on all of these guys. John Thune prevails today in this Senate leadership race. He agrees to President Trump's demands, and he does that again because Rick Scott got in the race. So that's a good thing. That's a good thing. Annoying that we don't have Rick Scott as the leader, but this is like anything that's worth fighting in life. Sometimes it's in different stages, right? You fight different battles, and you make up certain ground at certain moments. And so every time one of these opportunities presents itself, fight the battle. Fight the battle. See if you can cut it off at the pass. See if you can get the right person in there so you don't have to have some other battle in the future. Well, we will have more battles in the future. John Thune, he's a pretty establishment guy. And so you're going to have to work harder to hold him accountable. But at least we had this battle now to make him more attuned to the fact that his obligation is to give space to and push along the Trump typhoon that just came barreling through the country. The reason that there are now 3 power centers in our government, the House, the Senate, and the presidency, all controlled by Republicans, is President Trump. It's him. The voters put him in place. They were inspired by his agenda, and it's the mandate that they've given him that they'd like to see executed. And Republicans in Washington need to shake off the old, well, he's not like us. The Republican Party isn't tied up with the Trump brand. It's a completely different thing. No. It is. It is. Either get on board or get out. Either get on board or get out. Because that kind of thinking will just keep you in the wilderness, and it won't do any good for the American people. The kind of thinking that pays attention to what the voters want, that's how you win forever. Okay, a lot of calls coming in. Line 6 from Tyson's Corner. Xavier is joining us now. Xavier, good afternoon. So you're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Good afternoon, Vince. Great show as always. Hey, I just wanted to follow up on your point where you said that it would be fun if Donald Trump, right after inauguration, if the Senate went into recess so he could make all of his appointments and then let the Senate come back in, or have the Senate come back in and vote on whether they can stay permanently.
Right.
That way you can get things rolling. Don't forget, this is not out of line of what the Democrats have pulled in the past, because I think when the Republicans controlled the Senate under Barack Obama, and he wanted to make that appointment and create that Consumer Protection Board.
Liz Warren's thing.
He asserted that the Senate was out of session. I think it was probably near the Christmas holidays. But he asserted that it was out of session, and he made the appointment anyway as a recess appointment. That was never really fought back on much, but he made that appointment simply, even though the Senate was not in recess. I remember that from quite a while back. Also, on a different topic, I meant to bring it up a couple of days ago. Remember when all these states were putting in place, and what would they call it, the National Popular Vote Initiative?
Yeah.
And it was a compact, and I think about 17 or 18 states actually, they codified it into law. A number of the states actually codified it into law, pledging to give their electoral votes to the candidate who won the popular vote. It was in response to Trump in 2016. And so most of those states are blue states. So it would be funny if the Republican Party in those states sued to have those votes also declared for Donald Trump.
Yeah, isn't that? I haven't looked into the details of it, but sometimes when they pass laws like this, they're conditional on other states doing it too. Was there some number of critical mass they needed before it triggered it?
Right.
I don't know off the top of my head, but it is amusing to me, all these people, because the left had become convinced that the popular vote was only theirs forever. And now what they're finding is not so. And in fact, with more people getting registered to vote, with each passing American who's like, yeah, I'd like to register now, the Republicans, they're picking up the opportunity here. It's President Trump, really, who's created that advantage. Clever point. Thank you very much, Xavier. Good to have your call. Coming up, Tom Homan, the border czar, joins us moments from now.